Dr. Olivia Carter is a dedicated physician and a joyful mother-to-be, living a life of purpose and quiet anticipation as she prepares for her baby's arrival. But one fateful day, during a routine pharmacy trip, her world is upended. A heated and unjust confrontation with a law enforcement officer exposes the biases and systemic injustices that have long simmered beneath the surface of her community. Caught off guard and shaken, Olivia's encounter is captured on video and quickly goes viral, sparking a national conversation she never intended to lead. What begins as a humiliating and frightening moment transforms into a pivotal turning point, not only for Olivia, but for an entire community galvanized by her courage. As Olivia reluctantly steps into the public eye, she faces mounting challenges, balancing her demanding career, preparing for motherhood, and becoming the face of a movement for justice. She must navigate media scrutiny, political pushback, and the emotional toll of her fight, all while leaning on the kindness of unexpected allies and the strength of her growing support system. This is a story of resilience in the face of adversity, of one woman's journey to turn personal pain into collective progress. As Olivia builds bridges and challenges a broken system, she asks herself, how much can one person change? And how can the spark of a single moment ignite the flames of lasting reform? Dr. Olivia Carter awoke to the soft glow of morning light filtering through the curtains of her modest suburban home in Maryland. The house was cozy, with walls adorned with family photos and shelves lined with books, reflecting the lives of two deeply curious and hard-working people. Olivia and her husband, Michael, had worked tirelessly to build a life that offered stability and love. Michael was a middle school history teacher, passionate about inspiring young minds, while Olivia dedicated her career to maternal health as a respected obstetrician. At 7 months pregnant, Olivia was starting to feel the physical toll of carrying a new life. Yet, she felt a deep sense of purpose every time she thought about their unborn child. She was determined to balance her demanding career with motherhood, though the prospect of managing both left her feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty. This Saturday morning began like many others. Michael was already in the kitchen, humming an off-key tune as he cooked breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sizzle of eggs. "Morning, love," he greeted her with a warm smile as she waddled into the room. "How are my two favorite people today?" Olivia chuckled, placing a hand on her belly. "We are doing fine, but we could use some pancakes to start the day." Michael grinned, flipping another batch onto a plate. "Coming right up." The couple spent the morning in their usual rhythm, discussing everything from nursery plans to the latest news. By noon, Olivia decided to run a quick errand to pick up prenatal vitamins from the pharmacy. "You sure you do not want me to go with you?" Michael asked, concern flickering in his eyes. "I will be fine," Olivia assured him. "It is just a quick trip. Besides, you have papers to grade, and I could use the fresh air." Michael nodded reluctantly, walking her to the door and kissing her forehead. As Olivia eased into her car, the warm spring air filled her lungs. The sun was shining, and the neighborhood buzzed with life children riding bikes, neighbors tending to gardens. It was a peaceful moment, one she cherished as a reminder of the community they had built. The drive to the store was uneventful, giving Olivia time to reflect. Her mind wandered to her patients, many of whom faced significant barriers to accessing quality health care. She often thought about how she could make a bigger impact, especially as a Black woman in a medical field that still carried its biases. Arriving at the pharmacy, she found the parking lot busier than usual. After circling a few times, she finally spotted a space near the entrance and parked carefully. As she stepped out, the warm air and the faint hum of distant traffic greeted her. She placed a protective hand on her belly, her instincts always guiding her movements. Just as she reached the store's entrance, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, ma'am. You cannot park there." Startled, Olivia turned to see a uniformed police officer approaching her. He was tall and broad, his posture rigid, and his tone laced with authority. "I am sorry," Olivia said, confused. "Is there a problem?" The officer, whose name badge read D. Price, pointed to a sign several feet away. "That spot is restricted. You need to move your car." Olivia glanced back at the sign. It was partially obscured by overgrown branches. "I did not see the sign," she explained calmly. "I can move it right away." But the officer's tone remained stern. "Should have looked more carefully, ma'am. Ignorance is no excuse." The exchange caught the attention of a few passers-by, who began to slow their steps. Olivia felt the weight of their eyes on her. She maintained her composure, though a knot of unease tightened in her chest. "Officer," she said evenly, "I apologize. Let me move my car, and we can leave it at that." Instead of de-escalating, the officer seemed intent on prolonging the encounter. "License and registration," he demanded. Olivia hesitated. Her training as a doctor taught her to remain calm in tense situations, but this felt different. This felt personal. "I am happy to comply," she said, retrieving her wallet slowly and deliberately. "But may I ask why this is necessary for a parking issue?" The officer's jaw tightened. "Are you questioning my authority?" The knot in Olivia's chest grew tighter. Before she could respond, a voice from behind interrupted. "Is everything okay here?" Olivia turned to see a woman about her age, holding a shopping bag. Her expression was one of genuine concern. "I am fine," Olivia said quickly, though her tone betrayed her unease. The woman, whose name was Mia, stepped closer, her eyes darting between Olivia and the officer. "It just seems like a lot for a parking issue," she said, her voice calm but firm. The officer shot Mia a sharp look, but said nothing. Olivia felt a flicker of gratitude for this stranger's unexpected support. After several more minutes of tense questioning, the officer finally relented, allowing Olivia to move her car and go about her errand. Inside the pharmacy, Mia approached Olivia again. "I hope I did not overstep," she said. "Not at all," Olivia replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for stepping in. It means more than you know." Mia smiled. "You looked like you could use an ally. Are you okay?" Olivia nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her shopping basket. "It is just exhausting sometimes." Mia reached into her bag and handed Olivia a small bottle of water. "Take a moment," she said softly. For a brief moment, Olivia allowed herself to lean into the kindness of a stranger. As Olivia drove home, the encounter replayed in her mind. She was used to microaggressions, but the overt hostility from Officer Price had shaken her. Yet, she also felt a spark of something else: gratitude for Mia's intervention. Back home, Michael immediately sensed her distress. "What happened?" he asked, his brow furrowing with worry. Olivia recounted the event, her voice steady, despite the emotions bubbling beneath the surface. When she finished, Michael hugged her tightly. "You should not have to go through that," he said, his voice thick with anger and sadness. "I know," Olivia said softly, "but I am glad someone stepped in. It reminded me that there is still good out there." Michael nodded, his arms wrapped protectively around her. "We will get through this together, Liv. Always." As they sat in the quiet comfort of their living room, Olivia felt a renewed sense of determination. The world was imperfect, often painfully so, but moments of unexpected kindness reminded her that change was possible and worth fighting for. Little did she know, this encounter would be the catalyst for a journey that would change her life and the lives of many others forever. The Sunday morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of Olivia and Michael's home, casting a warm glow on the living room where they sat in silence. Olivia's thoughts were still tangled in the events of the day before. Though she had tried to push the memory aside, the confrontation with Officer Price lingered like a bruise on her spirit. She placed a hand on her belly, her touch instinctive and soothing. "I just keep thinking about how quickly things escalated," she said quietly. "What if it had gone further? What if—" Her voice trailed off. "Michael, seated beside her, reached for her hand. "But it didn't," he said, his voice steady. "You're here, safe, and so is our baby. That's what matters." Before Olivia could respond, Michael's phone buzzed on the coffee table. He picked it up and frowned as he read the screen. "Liv," he began hesitantly, "there's something you should see." He handed her the phone, and Olivia's heart sank. It was a video. A shaky recording of her interaction with Officer Price, taken by someone in the crowd. The caption read, "Pregnant black doctor harassed over a parking issue." Olivia hesitated before pressing play. The video was less than 2 minutes long, but captured the exchange in excruciating detail, the officer's tone, her attempts to remain calm, and Mia's intervention. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling, "this is everywhere." By mid-afternoon, the video had gone viral. Messages began pouring in, some from friends offering support, others from complete strangers expressing their outrage at the treatment Olivia had endured. "How could someone treat you like that?" one text read. "I'm so sorry this happened." "You're incredibly strong," said another. But not all the messages were kind. Hidden among the flood of support were comments accusing her of being dramatic or defying authority. Olivia read them anyway, her heart sinking with each cruel remark. "You were probably in the wrong," one post sneered. "Just comply next time," said another. The vitriol stung, but it wasn't new to Olivia. As a black woman and a doctor, she had encountered skepticism and dismissal her entire life. But seeing it play out so publicly felt different. Michael sat beside her, scrolling through his phone. "Liv, look at this." He showed her the trending hashtags, "Justice for Olivia" and "Reform Now." People from all over the country were sharing the video, offering solidarity and calling for accountability. Even local news outlets had picked up the story. "Do you see this?" Michael said, his voice a mix of disbelief and pride. "People are standing with you." Olivia nodded, her emotions swirling. The support was overwhelming, but so was the attention. She hadn't asked for this. Later that evening, Olivia received a private message from a familiar name. Mia. "Hi, Olivia," it read. "I'm not sure if you remember me. I was the woman at the pharmacy. I saw the video online and just wanted to check in. Are you okay?" Olivia smiled faintly and replied, "Mia, of course I remember you. Thank you for reaching out. I'm doing okay, just trying to process everything." Within minutes, Mia responded, "I can't imagine how hard this must be. If you ever need to talk, or if there's anything I can do, please let me know." Olivia stared at the message for a moment, a lump forming in her throat. The simple act of someone checking in a stranger, no less, meant more than she could express. "Thank you," she typed back. "I appreciate it more than you know." The next morning, Olivia returned to work at the hospital, her mind still buzzing with the events of the weekend. As she walked through the familiar hallways, she noticed colleagues exchanging glances, their conversations pausing when she passed. "Dr. Carter," one nurse said hesitantly, "I just wanted to say that I saw the video, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that." Olivia managed a small smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." Throughout the day, more people approached her with similar sentiments. Some shared their own experiences with discrimination, while others simply offered words of encouragement. By lunchtime, Olivia felt emotionally drained. She sat alone in the break room, picking at a salad she had no appetite for. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up to see Dr. Rachel Kim, a fellow obstetrician and one of her closest colleagues. "Of course," Olivia said, gesturing to the seat across from her. Rachel set down her tray and leaned forward. "How are you holding up?" Olivia hesitated. "I'm managing. It's just a lot," Rachel nodded. "I can't pretend to understand what you're going through, but I want you to know that you're not alone. Everyone here supports you." For the first time that day, Olivia felt a flicker of relief. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means everything." By the time Olivia returned home, she was exhausted. Michael greeted her at the door with a hug and a kiss on the forehead. "How was work?" he asked. "Draining," she admitted, kicking off her shoes. "But some people were really kind. It helped." Michael nodded, pulling her into a hug. "Good. You deserve all the kindness in the world, Liv." As they sat together on the couch, Michael showed her the latest developments online. Public figures were beginning to weigh in on her story, some offering support and others calling for broader discussions about law enforcement reform. Even more surprising, several healthcare organizations had reached out, asking Olivia to speak about her experience and the intersection of racial bias and maternal health. "What do you think?" Michael asked. "I don't know," Olivia said honestly. "I never wanted to be in the spotlight." "But maybe this is bigger than you," Michael said gently. "Maybe this is an opportunity to make a difference." Olivia looked down at her hands, her wedding ring catching the light. She thought about the baby growing inside her, the world she wanted them to inherit. "Maybe you're right," she said finally. As the sun set, Olivia felt a growing sense of resolve. The events of the past few days had left her shaken, but they had also opened a door she couldn't ignore. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever been silenced, dismissed, or mistreated. And if she had the chance to use her voice to make a change, she wouldn't waste it. Little did Olivia know her journey was only just beginning. The following week felt surreal for Olivia Carter. Her life, once defined by the predictable rhythm of patient rounds and quiet evenings at home, was now consumed by calls, messages, and an overwhelming sense of visibility. She could not open her phone without seeing her face or name attached to articles, hashtags, and online debates. At the hospital, her colleagues tread carefully around her. Some offered kind words or a sympathetic smile. Others avoided her entirely, their unease palpable. It was as if Olivia's newfound notoriety had made her untouchable, a symbol rather than a person. One afternoon, during a quiet moment between patient appointments, Olivia sat in her office scrolling through her email. Invitations poured in from advocacy groups, media outlets, and healthcare organizations, all asking her to share her story. She leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed. "How did this become my life?" she murmured. There was a knock at the door. Rachel Kim peeked in, her expression warm but concerned. "Got a minute?" she asked. Olivia nodded, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Rachel sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "How are you holding up? Really?" Olivia hesitated, then let out a heavy sigh. "I feel torn," she admitted. "On one hand, I'm glad the video sparked a conversation. But on the other hand, I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to be the face of anything." Rachel nodded empathetically. "That's a lot to carry, especially now." Her gaze shifted to Olivia's belly. "How's the little one doing?" Olivia smiled faintly, placing a hand on her stomach. "The baby's fine, strong, healthy. It's one of the few things keeping me grounded." Rachel reached across the desk, resting her hand on Olivia's for a brief moment. "Whatever you decide to do, whether you step into this spotlight or not, just know we're behind you." That evening, as Olivia drove home, she replayed Rachel's words in her mind. Could she step into the spotlight? Could she handle the pressure of being a voice for change while preparing for motherhood? As she pulled into her driveway, she noticed Michael standing on the porch with a stack of mail in his hands. His expression was unreadable. "What is it?" Olivia asked as she stepped out of the car. Michael handed her a thick envelope addressed in neat handwriting. Inside was a handwritten letter from a woman named Camille. "Dear Dr. Carter," it began, "I saw your story online, and I just wanted to say thank you. As a Black mother, I've faced my own share of struggles navigating a world that doesn't always see us. Watching you stand strong has inspired me to do the same for my children. Please know that your courage is making a difference." By the time Olivia finished reading, her eyes were brimming with tears. "Michael," she said softly, "people are looking to me for something I don't even know if I can give." Michael wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Liv, you've already given them hope. That's enough to start." The following day, Olivia received another unexpected message. This time, it was a phone call from a journalist named Leah Sanchez. "I know this is sudden," Leah began, her voice earnest, "but I wanted to ask if you'd be open to sharing your story in a piece I'm writing about systemic bias in healthcare and law enforcement. I think your perspective could help a lot of people understand what's happening." Olivia hesitated. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for something like that." Leah's tone softened. "I understand. It's a lot to take on. But I think your voice could be incredibly powerful, not just for the people already supporting you, but for those who need to hear the truth." After a long pause, Olivia agreed to meet with Leah later that week. The days leading up to the meeting were a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Olivia threw herself into her work, finding solace in the routines of patient care. But even in the quiet moments of her day, she felt the weight of her growing platform. On the morning of her meeting with Leah, Olivia dressed carefully, choosing a navy blue dress that accentuated her baby bump. She wanted to look composed but approachable, confident but not untouchable. When she arrived at the small cafe where they had agreed to meet, Leah was already there, a notebook and recorder on the table. She stood and extended a hand. "Dr. Carter, it's so nice to meet you," Leah said warmly. "Just Olivia is fine," she replied, shaking Leah's hand. They ordered coffee and sat across from each other, the bustling noise of the cafe creating a cocoon of privacy. "Before we start," Leah said, "I want you to know that this is your story. You can share as much or as little as you're comfortable with." Olivia nodded, taking a deep breath. "I appreciate that." The conversation began slowly, with Leah asking gentle questions about Olivia's work and her experiences as a Black doctor. As they delved deeper, Olivia found herself opening up about the confrontation with Officer Price. "It wasn't just about the parking spot," Olivia said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "It was about being seen as less than, as a problem instead of a person." Leah listened intently, jotting down notes but never interrupting. "How did it feel," she asked, "when the video went viral?" Olivia paused, searching for the right words. "It was overwhelming," she admitted, "but it also made me realize how many people have been through similar experiences. It's not just my story, it's theirs too." By the time the interview ended, Olivia felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. As she walked to her car, Leah called after her. "Olivia," she said, "thank you for trusting me with this. I think it's going to make a real difference." Driving home, Olivia replayed the conversation in her mind. She had been hesitant to speak out, but Leah's genuine interest and thoughtful questions had made her feel heard. When she arrived home, Michael was waiting for her with dinner on the table. "How'd it go?" he asked, his eyes full of curiosity. "It was good," Olivia said, surprised by her own answer. "It felt good to talk about it." Michael smiled, pulling out a chair for her. "That's a start." As they ate, Olivia felt a growing sense of clarity. She couldn't undo what had happened, but she could use it as a stepping stone for something greater. Her journey wasn't just about finding justice for herself. It was about creating a world where her child and all children could grow up feeling valued and protected. Olivia Carter's story was no longer just hers. It was rippling through communities, igniting conversations she never imagined. Each day brought new messages, interviews, and opportunities. But it also brought stress, the weight of being a symbol, when all she had wanted was to live a quiet life and prepare for her baby, was beginning to show. One evening, as Olivia sorted through a pile of letters that had arrived in the mail, she felt an overwhelming need for solitude. Her hand rested on her belly, grounding herself in the rhythmic movements of her baby. Michael entered the room, carrying 2 mugs of chamomile tea. "You've been at this for hours," he said gently. "Take a break." Olivia sighed, setting the letters aside. "I feel like I have to read them all. What if someone out there really needs to know they're not alone?" Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Liv. Let's go for a walk, get some fresh air." The spring evening was crisp, the faint scent of blooming flowers wafting through the air as they strolled through their neighborhood. Children played on lawns, and neighbors waved warmly. Olivia felt a flicker of normalcy, a reminder of the life she was fighting to protect. As they approached a local park, Michael pointed toward a small gathering of people near a gazebo. Curious, Olivia and Michael walked closer. To their surprise, a group of women in scrubs stood holding handmade signs. "Support Dr. Carter and justice for Olivia." "Is this for me?" Olivia whispered, her hand instinctively going to her chest. One of the women stepped forward. She was petite, with short curls and kind eyes. "Dr. Carter," she said, her voice slightly trembling. "I'm Nancy. I'm a nurse at St. Mary's across town. We heard about what happened to you, and we just wanted to let you know we've got your back." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as she looked around at the smiling faces. "You're not just a doctor," Nancy continued. "You're one of us, and what you're doing standing up, speaking out, it's giving us courage too." Michael squeezed Olivia's hand as she struggled to find her voice. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know people cared this much." "We do," another nurse said, stepping forward. "And not just because you're a doctor, because you're a person, and no one deserves what you went through." That night, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about the nurses. Their kindness had been so unexpected, so genuine, that it lifted a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. The next morning, as she sat in her office preparing for a patient consultation, her phone buzzed with a message from Mia, the woman who had intervened during the incident with Officer Price. "Hey, Olivia," the text read. "Would you have time to meet for coffee this week? I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened and wanted to see how you're doing." Olivia smiled and quickly replied, "I'd love that. How about Thursday afternoon?" When Thursday arrived, Olivia met Mia at a cozy cafe downtown. The space was warm and inviting, filled with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft hum of conversation. Mia greeted Olivia with a warm hug. "It's so good to see you," she said. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," Olivia admitted. "I've been overwhelmed, but there have been these moments of kindness, people I've never met reaching out to support me. It's been humbling." They ordered drinks and settled into a quiet corner of the cafe. "I saw the article Leah Sanchez wrote about you," Mia said. "You were incredible, so honest and composed." Olivia blushed. "It wasn't easy, but I realized that staying silent wouldn't help anyone, not me, not my baby, not the people who've been reaching out to me." Mia nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Olivia, I don't think what happened to you was random. I think it was the start of something bigger." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've become a voice for people who felt invisible for so long. And now that you're in this position, you could do so much more. Have you thought about starting an initiative? Something that tackles the intersection of healthcare, racial bias, and justice?" Olivia stared at Mia, her mind racing. She had considered taking on a larger role in the conversation, but the idea of creating something tangible, something lasting, hadn't crossed her mind. "An initiative," she repeated. "I wouldn't even know where to start." "I could help," Mia said with a small smile. "I've been involved in community organizing for years. We could get other advocates on board, find people who share your vision." Olivia hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "It's a big commitment," she said. Mia reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on Olivia's. "You don't have to decide today, but think about it. You've already inspired so many people just by being yourself. Imagine what you could do if you took it a step further." That evening, Olivia shared the conversation with Michael. "I think she's right," Michael said. "This isn't just about what happened to you. It's about changing the system so it doesn't happen to anyone else." Olivia nodded slowly. "But where do I even begin? I'm just one person." "You're not just one person," Michael said, his voice steady. "You've got me, our community, and now people like Mia and those nurses. You're not alone in this, Liv." His words struck a chord. For so long, Olivia had felt like she was fighting against the tide alone. But maybe she didn't have to be. As she lay in bed that night, Olivia thought about the nurses in the park, Leah's article, Mia's encouragement, and the countless messages of support she had received. Perhaps this was her calling, not just to heal individuals as a doctor, but to help heal a broken system. The spark of an idea began to take shape in her mind, one that would grow into something much bigger than she could have imagined. The idea of starting an initiative had stayed with Olivia Carter ever since her conversation with Mia. It felt daunting, yes, but also invigorating, a chance to channel her frustration and experiences into something meaningful. Still, the thought of balancing it with her work and impending motherhood left her feeling stretched thin. One evening, as Olivia sat on the couch with her laptop, drafting ideas for a potential mission statement, Michael entered the room, carrying a tray of tea and snacks. "You're at it again," he teased, setting the tray down. Olivia sighed, leaning back into the cushions. "I just don't know where to begin. There's so much to address: healthcare inequities, bias in law enforcement, the mental toll of discrimination. It feels overwhelming." Michael sat beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her knee. "You don't have to tackle everything at once. Start with what you know. You've always been passionate about maternal health. Maybe that's your focus." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. If I start with what I know best, I can build from there." Michael smiled. "And remember, Liv, you're not doing this alone. You've got a whole community ready to stand with you." A week later, Olivia and Mia organized their first meeting at the local community center. Word had spread quickly through social media and word of mouth, and by the time Olivia arrived, the room was already buzzing with energy. Dozens of people had gathered: nurses, teachers, activists, students, and even a few retired police officers. Olivia recognized Nancy, the nurse who had organized the gathering in the park, waving from across the room. Mia greeted Olivia with a hug. "You ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Olivia replied, clutching a folder filled with notes and ideas. When the meeting began, Olivia stood at the front of the room, her heart pounding. Public speaking wasn't her forte, but the faces looking back at her were warm, expectant, and encouraging. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I never imagined I'd find myself in this position. What happened to me at that pharmacy was a moment of humiliation and fear, but it was also a wake-up call. It reminded me that this isn't just about one incident. It's about a system that allows moments like that to happen every day, to so many people." The room fell silent, her words resonating deeply. "I'm here because I want to change that system, and I know I can't do it alone. That's why I'm grateful to see so many of you here tonight, people who care, who want to make a difference. Together, I think we can build something powerful." The room erupted in applause, and Olivia felt a swell of hope. The rest of the meeting was electric. People shared their stories, some heartbreaking and others inspiring. A retired officer named Captain James Monroe spoke about the need for transparency and accountability within the police force. "I've seen good cops and bad ones," Monroe said, his deep voice commanding attention. "And the truth is, we need to rebuild trust from the ground up. That means listening to the people we're supposed to serve and holding ourselves accountable when we fall short." Nancy, the nurse, spoke passionately about the disparities in maternal care for Black women. "We've known for years that Black women are more likely to face complications during pregnancy and childbirth, and yet we haven't done enough to fix it. That has to change." As the meeting went on, Olivia felt the beginnings of a movement taking shape. People exchanged ideas, contacts, and resources, laying the groundwork for what would soon become the Carter Initiative for Justice and Equity. In the days that followed, the momentum grew. Local businesses offered to sponsor events. Community members volunteered their time and skills. Even Olivia's colleagues at the hospital joined in, organizing workshops on implicit bias and cultural competency in healthcare. Olivia's role as a leader came naturally, though it took a toll on her energy. Between her work at the hospital, planning for the baby, and spearheading the initiative, she often found herself stretched thin. One evening, after a particularly long day, Michael found her sitting in the nursery, her head resting against the crib's edge. "Liv," he said softly, sitting beside her. "You've been running yourself ragged. You need to rest." "I can't stop now," Olivia said, her voice weary but determined. "People are counting on me." Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you're counting on yourself, too. You're doing incredible work, but you have to take care of you and our little one." Olivia sighed, leaning into his embrace. "You're right. I feel like I have to prove I'm strong enough for this." "You already are," Michael said, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "And you're not alone. Let the people around you carry some of the weight." Inspired by Michael's words, Olivia began delegating more responsibilities. Mia took charge of organizing events, while Captain Monroe worked on drafting proposals for police reform. Nancy and her team focused on maternal health, launching a community outreach program to provide prenatal care for underserved families. The initiative quickly gained traction. At a town hall meeting a few weeks later, the community gathered to discuss the next steps. The room was packed, with standing room only, as people came to lend their voices to the cause. "We're not just fighting for justice for one person," Captain Monroe said during his speech. "We're fighting for a system that sees and values all of us." The crowd erupted in applause, their energy palpable. That night, as Olivia reflected on the meeting, she felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in months. She still carried the scars of her confrontation with Officer Price, but they no longer felt like burdens. Instead, they were reminders of how far she had come and how far she could go. "Michael," she said as they sat together on the couch, "I think we're building something real." Michael smiled, squeezing her hand. "You're building something real, Liv, and it's just the beginning." As Olivia drifted off to sleep that night, she felt the baby kick, a strong and steady rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the movement she had helped spark. For the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. Olivia Carter awoke to the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the window. The weather matched her mood, heavy but focused. Her calendar was packed, with back-to-back meetings for the Carter Initiative, patient appointments at the hospital, and preparations for the baby. The quiet moments she once cherished seemed like a distant memory. As she sat at the breakfast table, Michael placed a steaming mug of tea in front of her and kissed her forehead. "You're going to do great today," he said, his voice soft but reassuring. Olivia offered a small smile, grateful for his support. She had another interview lined up, this time with a national news outlet. While the growing attention brought invaluable momentum to the initiative, it also invited an unsettling mix of praise and criticism. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A notification popped up, a new article titled "The Reluctant Advocate: How Dr. Olivia Carter Became the Voice of a Movement." Olivia clicked the link and skimmed the piece. It was largely positive, detailing her journey from a private citizen to a public figure. But as she scrolled to the comments, her stomach tightened. She's just milking this for attention. Maybe if she followed the rules, none of this would have happened. Another case of playing the victim. Olivia locked her phone and pushed it away. "Liv," Michael said, noticing her tense expression, "don't let those trolls get in your head. They don't know you or what you're fighting for." "I know," she said, her voice quiet, But it's exhausting. No matter how much good I try to do, someone always wants to tear it down. Michael reached across the table, taking her hand in his. That's why you've got me, and Mia, and everyone else who believes in you. You're not alone in this. Later that morning, Olivia arrived at the news studio for her interview. The producer greeted her warmly, ushering her into the makeup chair before briefing her on the segment. We'll focus on your work with the Carter Initiative, the producer explained, but there may be a few questions about the confrontation with Officer Price. Is that okay? That's fine, Olivia said, though her stomach fluttered with nerves. As the cameras rolled, the interviewer, a seasoned journalist named Lisa Porter, began with an easy question about Olivia's background as a doctor. The conversation flowed smoothly until Lisa pivoted to the viral video. You've been very vocal about the need for systemic reform, Lisa said, but critics have questioned whether your confrontation with Officer Price has been exaggerated. How do you respond to that? Olivia paused, choosing her words carefully. I wish there wasn't a need to talk about what happened to me, she said. But the truth is, it's not just my story. It's the story of countless people who face discrimination and bias every day. If sharing my experience can help bring about change, then I'm willing to keep talking about it. Lisa nodded. Your initiative has already gained significant traction. What do you hope to accomplish in the coming months? Olivia's expression softened. Our goal is to address two critical issues: improving maternal health outcomes for marginalized communities and advocating for accountability in law enforcement. Both are deeply personal to me, and both are long overdue for reform. The interview aired that evening, drawing praise from supporters and reigniting debate online. The hashtags Justice for Olivia and Carter Initiative trended once more, amplifying the initiative's mission. But with the attention came renewed scrutiny. Anonymous accounts sent Olivia hateful messages, questioning her integrity and accusing her of exploiting her pregnancy for sympathy. You're a fraud, one message read. Go back to being a doctor and stop playing activist, said another. Olivia stared at the screen, her hands trembling. Mia called later that night, sensing something was wrong. I saw the interview, she said. You were amazing. How are you holding up? I don't know, Olivia admitted. Every time I feel like I'm making progress, the backlash pulls me down again. Mia's voice was firm but compassionate. You can't let the negativity drown out the voices that matter. For every troll, there are hundreds of people rooting for you. Olivia nodded, even though Mia couldn't see her. You're right. It's just a lot to carry. Then let us carry it with you, Mia said. That's what we're here for. The next day, Olivia attended a workshop on maternal health disparities, organized by Nancy and her team of nurses. The room was filled with healthcare professionals, community advocates, and mothers eager to learn and share their experiences. During the Q&A session, a young Black mother named Jada stood up, cradling her infant son. I just want to thank you, Dr. Carter, Jada said, her voice trembling. When I was pregnant, I didn't feel like anyone cared about what I was going through. But seeing you out here, fighting for us, it gives me hope. Olivia's throat tightened as she fought back tears. Thank you, she said softly. Hearing that means more than you know. That evening, Olivia returned home feeling both exhausted and inspired. Michael was waiting for her with a warm meal and an open ear. How was the workshop? He asked as they sat down to eat. It was amazing, Olivia said, but it reminded me of how much work there is to do. These women deserve so much more than what the system gives them. Michael reached across the table, taking her hand. You're already making a difference, Liv, one step at a time. As Olivia looked around their home, filled with signs of their growing family, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for Jada, for her unborn child, and for every person who needed a voice. That night, as the rain began to fall again, Olivia sat by the nursery window, her hand resting on her belly. The baby kicked gently, a reminder of the life she was protecting and the future she was working to shape. She whispered softly, "We're going to make this world better for you, little one. I promise." Though the road ahead was long and uncertain, Olivia felt ready to face it, bolstered by the kindness and resilience of the people around her. The weeks following Olivia Carter's national interview were a whirlwind of activity. The Carter Initiative had gained traction far beyond the community, drawing support from prominent figures in healthcare, education, and even law enforcement reform. But with the heightened attention came new challenges, political hurdles, bureaucratic red tape, and persistent online harassment. One morning, as Olivia reviewed the initiative's upcoming event schedule, her phone buzzed with a call. The name on the screen surprised her: Captain James Monroe, the retired police officer who had spoken at the community meeting weeks earlier. "Good morning, Captain Monroe," Olivia said as she answered. "Please, call me James," he replied, his tone warm but serious. "I wanted to touch base with you about something important. Are you free to meet this afternoon?" "Of course," Olivia said, intrigued. They agreed to meet at a local coffee shop, a quiet spot tucked away from the busier parts of town. When Olivia arrived, James was already there, sipping a cup of black coffee. His presence was commanding, yet his kind eyes immediately put her at ease. "Thank you for meeting me," James said as Olivia sat down. "Of course," Olivia replied. "What's on your mind?" James leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. "I've been following your story closely, and I want you to know how much I admire what you're doing. Speaking out the way you have, it takes real courage." "Thank you," Olivia said, though she felt a wave of self-doubt. "Honestly, it still feels overwhelming most days." "That's to be expected," James said with a nod. "But you're not alone in this fight. And that's why I wanted to meet." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "What's this?" Olivia asked, opening it to reveal detailed notes, data charts, and proposals for police reform initiatives. "I spent over 30 years in law enforcement," James began. "I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I can tell you, the system is long overdue for change. I've been working on these ideas for years, but I never had the platform to bring them to life. You do." Olivia scanned the documents, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The proposals were comprehensive recommendations for independent oversight committees, community policing programs, and mandatory de-escalation training. "This is incredible," Olivia said, looking up at James. "But why give this to me?" "Because people are listening to you," James said simply, "and because I believe in what you're doing. We can't change the system overnight, but we can start planting seeds, and I want to help you do that." The collaboration with James Monroe marked a turning point for the Carter Initiative. With his expertise and connections, they began drafting a formal proposal for their first major policy push: the establishment of an independent oversight committee for police misconduct cases. The idea was met with enthusiasm from the community and skepticism from local officials. Olivia knew they would face an uphill battle, but she felt emboldened by the support of people like James and Mia. One afternoon, as Olivia and Mia worked on the proposal at the initiative's small office, they received a surprise visitor: Nancy, the nurse who had been an early supporter. "You've got to see this," Nancy said, holding up her phone. She played a video of a young black woman addressing a crowd at a rally in another city. "My name is Jada," the woman said, her voice steady and powerful. "And I'm here today because of Dr. Olivia Carter. Her courage inspired me to share my story, to stand up and demand better for my community. If she can fight, so can we." Olivia stared at the screen, her throat tight with emotion. "That's the woman from the workshop," Olivia said softly. "She's incredible," Mia said. "And she's proof that what we're doing is working." The rally video quickly went viral, drawing even more attention to the Carter Initiative. But it also caught the eye of Officer Daniel Price, the man who had sparked Olivia's journey with his unjust confrontation. From his desk at the precinct, Price watched the video with a scowl. The public scrutiny had taken a toll on him, and his once confident demeanor had turned defensive and bitter. "She's making a spectacle of this whole thing," he muttered to a colleague. "Maybe," the colleague said, glancing around nervously, "but you might want to let it go. It's not looking good for you." Price clenched his fists, but said nothing. Meanwhile, Olivia prepared for her next major challenge, presenting the Oversight Committee proposal to the City Council. James and Mia worked tirelessly by her side, fine-tuning every detail and anticipating potential objections. The night before the council meeting, Olivia sat in the nursery, rehearsing her speech aloud. Michael entered, carrying a mug of warm milk. "Practicing for the big day?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I want to get it right," Olivia said. "This is our chance to make real change, and I don't want to mess it up." "You won't," Michael said firmly. "You've been preparing for this moment your whole life, even if you didn't know it." Olivia smiled, her hand resting on her belly. "I just want our baby to grow up in a better world." "And they will," Michael said, "because of you." The next day, the council chamber was packed with supporters, reporters, and skeptical officials. Olivia felt the weight of their expectations as she stepped up to the podium. She took a deep breath and began. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "My name is Dr. Olivia Carter, and I'm here today not just as a mother-to-be, but as a member of this community, asking for change." She spoke passionately about the need for accountability, the harm caused by unchecked power, and the hope for a system that served and protected everyone equally. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Even some of the council members looked moved. As Olivia returned to her seat, James leaned over and whispered, "You were incredible." But Olivia knew the fight wasn't over. The council had yet to vote, and there were still countless obstacles ahead. That evening, as Olivia and Michael walked through their neighborhood, a neighbor approached them with a warm smile. "Dr. Carter," she said, "I just wanted to say thank you. What you're doing, it's giving all of us hope." Olivia felt a swell of gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but resolute. For the first time in weeks, Olivia felt not just the weight of the fight, but the strength of the people standing with her. The city council vote was scheduled for the following week, and the tension in the air was palpable. Olivia Carter spent every spare moment preparing, meeting with supporters, answering questions from council members, and responding to the mounting wave of public interest. The Oversight Committee proposal had sparked both excitement and resistance, and Olivia knew the stakes were high. Michael noticed how deeply consumed she had become, often catching her poring over notes late into the night or anxiously pacing the nursery. One evening, he gently closed her laptop and placed his hands on her shoulders. "Liv," he said softly, "you need to rest. You've done everything you can. Tomorrow will take care of itself." Olivia hesitated, then sighed, leaning into his embrace. "I know. It's just, I keep thinking about all the people counting on this. What if we don't get the votes?" Michael kissed the top of her head. "You've already changed the conversation. No matter what happens tomorrow, you've planted seeds that will grow. Trust that." The day of the vote arrived, and the city council chambers were packed to capacity. The tension in the room was almost tangible, a quiet hum of anticipation as supporters and opponents filled every seat. Outside, crowds gathered with signs, chanting in support of the Carter Initiative. As Olivia entered, flanked by Mia and Captain James Monroe, she felt the weight of their shared mission pressing down on her. But as she looked around at the faces of the people who had stood with her from the beginning, she felt a surge of determination. "Whatever happens today," Mia whispered, "we're not stopping here." Olivia nodded, her resolve hardening. The session began with procedural motions and statements from council members. some expressing support for the proposal and others voicing skepticism. Olivia sat with her team, listening intently, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When it was time for public comments, Olivia rose and walked to the podium. The room fell silent as she adjusted the microphone and began to speak. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "My name is Dr. Olivia Carter, and I am here today to ask for your support for a proposal that I believe is not just necessary, but overdue." She spoke about her personal experience, the viral video that had thrust her into the spotlight, and the countless stories she had heard since then from people who had faced similar injustices. "This isn't just about me," she said, her voice growing stronger. "It's about accountability. It's about trust. It's about creating a system where people feel protected, not threatened." As she continued, she saw council members leaning forward, their expressions thoughtful. She could feel the room shifting, her words resonating in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. "I'm not asking for perfection," she concluded. "I'm asking for progress, and I believe we can start that progress here, today, together." The applause that followed was thunderous, and Olivia returned to her seat, her heart pounding. The council deliberated for what felt like an eternity. Olivia and her team waited in the hallway, the muffled sound of debate carrying through the closed doors. "Whatever happens," James said, "you've made them listen. That's a victory in itself." Olivia nodded, though the knot in her stomach refused to loosen. When the council finally reconvened, the chamber fell silent. The council president stood, a sheet of paper in his hands. "After thorough deliberation," he began, "the City Council has voted on the proposal to establish an independent oversight committee for police misconduct cases. The final vote is 6-3 in favor." A wave of relief and triumph washed over the room. Supporters erupted into cheers, and Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. Michael, who had been watching from the back of the room, rushed forward to embrace her. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it," Olivia corrected, her heart full. The victory was a turning point for the Carter Initiative. News outlets covered the council's decision extensively, framing it as a landmark step toward accountability and reform. Olivia's phone buzzed constantly with messages of congratulations and encouragement. But even as she celebrated the progress, Olivia knew the fight was far from over. Later that week, Olivia received a call from Jada, the young mother whose speech at a rally had gone viral. "Dr. Carter," Jada said, her voice filled with excitement, "I just wanted to thank you. Because of what you've done, I've been invited to speak at a national conference on community activism. None of this would have happened without you." Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Jada, you did that. Your courage and your voice made people listen. I'm just glad I could be part of your journey." Despite the momentum, not everyone was celebrating. Officer Daniel Price watched the news coverage with a scowl, his frustration mounting. His actions had led to this chain of events, and he now found himself under investigation for his behavior during the confrontation with Olivia. At the precinct, his colleagues avoided him, their loyalty eroded by the scrutiny his actions had brought upon the department. "Price," his captain said one afternoon, "you need to understand something. The world's changing, and you're either going to adapt or get left behind." Price said nothing, but the words stuck with him. As the weeks turned into months, the Oversight Committee began its work, reviewing cases and building trust within the community. Olivia balanced her growing role in the initiative with her responsibilities as a doctor and soon-to-be mother. One afternoon, as she rested on the couch, Michael brought her a small gift, a framed photo of the two of them standing outside City Hall on the day of the vote. "I thought you might want this as a reminder," he said. Olivia traced her fingers over the frame, her eyes filling with tears. "It's perfect," she said. "Thank you." Michael kissed her forehead. "You've come so far, Liv. And this is just the beginning. Olivia smiled, her hand resting on her belly. She knew the road ahead would be long, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to face it. The months following the establishment of the Oversight Committee were a whirlwind for Olivia Carter and her team. The Carter Initiative expanded its reach, with new programs focusing on maternal health equity, community policing workshops, and public advocacy. Each success brought renewed hope, but also more challenges. The Oversight Committee faced resistance from within the police department, with some officers viewing it as a threat to their autonomy. Meanwhile, the initiative's growing visibility drew criticism from certain political groups, accusing it of being anti-police, a claim Olivia vehemently denied at every opportunity. "It's not about being against law enforcement," she explained during an interview with a local news outlet. "It's about ensuring accountability and building trust. That benefits everyone." The pushback was frustrating, but Olivia had learned to channel her energy into the work. She couldn't control everyone's opinions, but she could control how she responded. One day, as Olivia walked through the hospital hallways, she was stopped by a nurse she hadn't met before. "Dr. Carter," the woman said hesitantly, "can I talk to you for a moment?" "Of course," Olivia replied, stepping aside to give the nurse her full attention. "My name is Alana," the nurse began. "I just transferred here, but I've been following your work with the Carter Initiative. I wanted to thank you." Olivia tilted her head, surprised. "Thank me?" Alana nodded, her voice trembling slightly. "I lost my sister during childbirth 2 years ago. She was dismissed by her doctors when she complained about severe pain. They told her it was normal and sent her home. By the time she returned, it was too late." Olivia's chest tightened as she listened. "I didn't think anyone cared about stories like hers," Alana continued, her eyes brimming with tears. "But then I saw what you were doing, and it gave me hope. It made me believe we could change things." Olivia reached out, placing a hand on Alana's shoulder. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Your sister's story matters, and so does your voice. If there's anything I can do to support you, please let me know." Alana smiled faintly, wiping her tears. "You're already doing it. Thank you." That evening, as Olivia recounted the encounter to Michael, her voice was heavy with emotion. "It's moments like that," she said, "that remind me why we started this in the first place." Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're giving people something they haven't had in a long time. Hope." The following week, the Carter Initiative hosted its largest event, yet a community town hall on maternal health and police reform. Held in a local high school gymnasium, the event drew hundreds of attendees, including healthcare professionals, activists, and everyday citizens eager to participate in the conversation. As Olivia stepped onto the stage, she felt a wave of nervous energy. The room buzzed with anticipation, and the sight of so many people gathered for a shared purpose filled her with both pride and responsibility. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but warm. "Tonight, we're not just discussing problems, we're working together to find solutions." Throughout the evening, panelists shared stories, data, and actionable strategies. Captain James Monroe spoke about the progress of the Oversight Committee, while Nancy and her team highlighted the success of their maternal health outreach programs. But the most powerful moment came when Jada, the young mother who had become a vocal advocate, took the stage. "When I first met Dr. Carter, I didn't think my voice mattered," Jada said, her baby cradled in her arms. "But she showed me that it does. And now I want to show others that theirs do too." The audience erupted in applause, and Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. As the event wrapped up, Olivia stayed behind to mingle with attendees. One by one, people approached her, sharing their gratitude, their stories, and their hopes for the future. But then, to Olivia's surprise, she saw a familiar face in the crowd, Officer Daniel Price. Her heart skipped a beat as he walked toward her, his expression unreadable. Dr. Carter, he said, his voice quieter than she remembered. Officer Price, Olivia replied, her tone neutral but firm. I wanted to— He hesitated, then took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize for how I treated you that day. Olivia stared at him, unsure of how to respond. I've had a lot of time to think, Price continued, and I realize now that I was wrong, not just about you, but about a lot of things. Watching how you've handled all this, it's made me see things differently. Olivia studied his face, searching for sincerity. She saw no trace of the hostility she had once encountered, only regret. Thank you, she said finally, her voice measured. I hope you'll use what you've learned to be part of the solution. I will, Price said, nodding. I'm trying. As Olivia drove home that night, she replayed the encounter in her mind. Michael was waiting for her in the living room, a book in his hands. How did it go? He asked, setting the book aside. It was incredible, Olivia said, sinking onto the couch beside him. But something unexpected happened. She recounted her conversation with Officer Price, and Michael listened intently. Do you think he was sincere? Michael asked. I think so, Olivia said. And even if he wasn't, it doesn't change what we're building. Michael nodded, his hand resting on her belly. You're changing more than systems live. You're changing hearts. Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She thought about Alana, Jada, and even Officer Price, proof that change, no matter how slow, was possible. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Olivia felt the baby kick, a reminder of the life she was nurturing and the future she was shaping. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. Together, they were building a movement, one step at a time. The final months of Olivia Carter's pregnancy coincided with the Carter Initiative's most active period yet. The Oversight Committee had begun its first reviews, shining a light on cases that had been ignored for years. Community programs to improve maternal health were flourishing, with local clinics reporting increased participation and trust among underserved populations. But Olivia felt the strain. Between her work as a doctor, her role as an advocate, and preparing for her baby's arrival, exhaustion lingered at the edges of her every move. One morning, as Olivia sat in her office sorting through emails, Mia burst in, her face alight with excitement. You're not going to believe this, Mia said, waving her phone. What is it? Olivia asked, leaning back in her chair. The Carter Initiative has been nominated for the Community Impact Award by the National Justice Alliance, Mia announced, grinning from ear to ear. Olivia's eyes widened. You're kidding. Not even a little, Mia said, placing her phone on the desk to show the announcement. They're recognizing us for our work with the Oversight Committee and maternal health programs. Liv, this is huge. Olivia stared at the screen, her emotions swirling. The recognition was validation for the countless hours of work, the sacrifices, and the moments of doubt. This isn't just my award, Olivia said softly. It's ours. It's the community's. Mia placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. You've earned this, Olivia. We've earned this. The awards ceremony was scheduled for early spring, just weeks after Olivia's due date. By then, the nursery was ready, the initiative's programs were thriving, and Olivia had begun to delegate more responsibilities to Mia and Captain James Monroe. I'll need to take a step back for a while, Olivia said during a team meeting. But I trust all of you to keep this moving forward. This work isn't about one person, it's about all of us. The team nodded, their respect for Olivia evident. The night Olivia went into labor was calm and quiet. She and Michael had just finished dinner when she felt the first pangs. Michael, she said, clutching his hand, I think it's time. He sprang into action, grabbing the hospital bag and calling the doctor. The drive to the hospital was a blur of excitement and nerves. Olivia had delivered countless babies as a doctor, but this was different. This was her baby. Hours later, As the first light of dawn broke through the hospital windows, Olivia held her newborn daughter in her arms. Michael sat beside her, his face a mixture of awe and exhaustion. "She's perfect," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Just like her mom," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. They decided to name her Grace, a symbol of the strength and kindness that had carried them through the past year. News of Grace's birth spread quickly through the community. Flowers and cards flooded their home, each message a testament to the lives Olivia had touched. "You've built something incredible," Michael said one evening as they sat on the couch, Grace sleeping soundly in Olivia's arms. "And now, you get to enjoy the best part of it all, family." Olivia smiled, brushing a soft curl from Grace's tiny face. "Family and community," she said. "They're intertwined now." The awards ceremony arrived sooner than Olivia expected. She debated whether to attend, hesitant to leave Grace so soon after her birth. But Michael and Mia insisted. "You need to be there," Michael said. "This isn't just an award, it's a moment to reflect on everything you've accomplished." Reluctantly, Olivia agreed. The ceremony was held in a grand auditorium, the audience filled with advocates, policymakers, and community leaders. When the Carter Initiative was announced as the winner, the crowd erupted into applause. Olivia stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding. She looked out at the sea of faces, Mia, James, Nancy, Jada, and so many others who had been part of this journey. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady. "This award isn't about me. It's about the countless people who came together to create something bigger than themselves." She spoke about the power of community, the importance of resilience, and the belief that change was possible when people worked together. "And to my daughter Grace," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "this is for you. For the world, I hope you'll grow up in a world where justice and kindness prevail." The audience rose to their feet, their applause thunderous. As the ceremony ended, Olivia stepped outside into the cool evening air. Mia joined her, a broad smile on her face. "You were incredible," Mia said. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," Olivia replied, pulling her into a hug. As they stood there, Olivia felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth every step. In the weeks that followed, Olivia settled into her new role as both a mother and a leader. She continued to guide the initiative from behind the scenes, trusting her team to carry the torch. One afternoon, as she rocked Grace to sleep, Olivia reflected on how far they had come. From a moment of humiliation and fear had grown a movement of hope and change. Michael entered the room, wrapping an arm around her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How grateful I am," Olivia said softly. "For what?" "For everything," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "For the people who stood by me, for the chance to make a difference, and for her." Michael kissed her temple. "You've changed the world, Liv." "Not just me," she said, smiling. "We've changed it, together." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over their home, Olivia felt a profound sense of hope for the future. The fight for justice and equity was far from over, but with Grace in her arms and a community at her back, she knew they were ready for whatever came next. Olivia Carter's story is a reminder that even in the face of injustice, resilience, unity, and courage can create ripples of change. From a single moment of discrimination grew a movement that reshaped her community and inspired countless others across the nation. Her journey doesn't end here, and neither does the fight for justice. Every small act, every conversation, vote, and moment of kindness matters in building a brighter future for all. Thank you for joining Olivia's journey and for being part of this story. If you believe in resilience, kindness, and the power of community, subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope and change. Together, we can make a difference.